Honestly, after how the Super Bowl ended, I'm just glad the Kraken made it out of Philadelphia all right. In the end, it was not that bad of an end to a relatively pretty bad road trip, especially the way the Kraken have been playing on the road. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken come up just short against the Winnipeg Jets, falling 3-2 in the shootout. So while honestly getting 1 point out of Winnipeg at the end of a road trip in their arena, and it's a good Jets team that the Kraken were in against, is a pretty good outcome for the Kraken, it does come at the end of a road trip that was disappointing to say the least. Now, fortunately, they are able to finish it off with these last two games coming away with 3 points against a Flyers team that they should beat, and a Jets team that, like we said, getting 1 point is a decent outcome. With the 3 losses at the beginning of it, they're coming home still needing to make up some ground. Of course, even with that being said, I don't want it to sound too doom and gloom. The team is still in very good position to at least make the playoffs, as even though things have tightened up among the top 4 teams in the Pacific Division, and only 3 automatically come out of the Pacific, the 5th team in the Flames is, with the same number of games played, still 5 points behind the Kraken, and the other teams in those wildcard spots are right around the same area. So they still have a decently comfortable cushion there, but they do need to win some of these games over the rest of the season against the teams that they should be beating. Fortunately, even in these next couple of games, they'll play more of that type of team than pretty much any of the other teams in their division or in the West. Focusing in, though, on just this game in particular against the Jets, there were some interesting signs for what the future could hold for the Kraken in just the lineup, where Grubauer gets the start in net, which is easily the most interesting thing, considering it's his first now back-to-back starts in quite a while, and with a day's rest, signaling that there might be a bit of a change of the guard there as far as which guy is getting the more 1A treatment in this tandem between him and Jones. And if Grubauer keeps playing the way that he has over the last month or so, and did continue to play in this game, it will be very interesting to see what happens with Jones when Drieger comes back in the next few weeks. That again is a discussion for a later date, but with the trade deadline coming up, if the Kraken have 3 NHL goaltenders and 2 of whom have played at least decently this season, there's a chance that one of them could get traded out. Either way, as for the Kraken in this game, there was also an interesting decision made in putting in John Hayden and healthy scratching Daniel Sprong, who, in spite of scoring pretty consistently for the Kraken with 14 goals off of the 4th line, he has started to regress a little bit defensively, and even some of that offense shoot first mentality has kind of waned here in the last few games. And with John Hayden having his birthday, well, a birthday doesn't necessarily mean that you get in the lineup because of it. The Kraken do decide to make that switch, or I guess Hackstall makes that switch in this game, and for what it's worth, it worked out. But not necessarily right away, as in the first period, for the first 10 or so minutes of this first period, while play was relatively back and forth, and there was a lot of, honestly, kind of sloppy play in the neutral zone from both teams that killed some transitions, the Jets were definitely getting the better and certainly more numerous scoring opportunities and shots off on goal. In fact, at one point, I think the Jets had the first 6 or 7 shots officially recorded before the Kraken actually got one on net. Now, the Kraken still had their chances. They were just having trouble actually getting them on net with a few misses on open looks. Good news, at least, though, as I hinted at with how Grubauer played lately and in this game, was that he was up to the task, even with a somewhat more porous than we've been used to Kraken defense in front of him. Now, at least to start off with, a lot of those shots were coming from the outside, but that did ramp up until the middle of the period. And while Grubauer was making save after save, it seemed like it was just a matter of time before the Jets got one in. Right up until the Kraken get their first power play of the game, which just kills that momentum for the Jets right in its tracks. And while the Kraken don't score on this power play, it did feel like an important one just to stop that momentum and try to get things turned the other direction, which they are able to do, and even end up with another 4 minutes of power play a few minutes later, which again they aren't able to score on, though this time it was not without their opportunities to score. Actually, now that I think about it, this may have come on the first power play, but probably the best scoring chance that the Kraken had maybe in the game, other than the goal that John Hayden is eventually going to get, spoiler alert, was a puck that gets rebounded off of Riddick off of a shot from, I actually don't even know who shot it originally. Maybe it was Bjorkstrand. Wennberg's out in front of the net, and the puck comes right to him on his backhand. He's facing away from Riddick, so I guess he just didn't see that Riddick was on the other side of the goal. He has what would have been an easy tap-in goal backhanded if he just turns around and looks, which, being the guy in front of the net, he should be doing. And honestly, even without looking, if you're the guy in front of the net on the power play, you should just be jamming that puck towards the goal and hoping that you get it through some sort of hole in the goaltender, or better yet, like was the case here, he's just not at that side of the net in the first place. But instead, because it's Alex Wennberg, he decides to look for someone to pass this to and tries to get it out towards the top of the slot, where I think it was Bjorkstrand that was standing there in the slot for a shot for him. But that pass never gets through, and what should have been an easy tap-in backhanded goal for Wennberg turns into a killed-off power play. And the Kraken, by the end of the first, the score is still scoreless, as the Kraken do come up empty on 6 minutes of power play in the back half of this period. Now, before anybody gets too carried away, I do also want to take this opportunity to say that all in all, I think Wennberg has played pretty well for the Kraken this season, certainly better than he did for the vast majority and certainly up to this point last season, and especially in the defensive end, where he's been one of the better defensive forwards on the Kraken roster. Really, Matty Beniers is the only guy that immediately comes to mind as someone that's played more consistently well in the defensive end. Maybe Eberle and a couple of others, but Wennberg's certainly at the top of that list. Tanev and Gord probably is still ahead of him. He's also played very well on the penalty kill, where the Kraken have needed the help. But he does pass way too much in the offensive end. He is very talented at playmaking and getting around guys with the puck, very good with the puck on his stick. He just does not ever want to shoot it. And while that does have its uses to set up plays with that ability to get the puck around people and draw guys to him, and then get passes for other guys to take shots, it is not a particularly good mentality to have for a guy that's going to be net front, not just on the power play, but in general. Now, I never want to say that the Kraken should have fewer guys net front. The point is that especially on the power play, where it's a designed play to have a guy standing in that area, a guy that never wants to shoot the puck and is always looking to pass it is probably not the guy you want there. You're going to have Wennberg on the power play, which honestly I'm not sure is the best strategy, although he is one of the best guys at actually getting it into the offensive end through the neutral zone. You probably want to have Wennberg more out on the sides rather than in front of the net. Or at the very least, drill it into his head that if he's going to be in front of the net and the puck comes to him, to get it back towards the net regardless of whether or not he can see what's behind him or not. Moving on though to the second period, the good news, at least for the Kraken special teams wise, is that while their power play did not get off to a particularly good start in this game, the penalty kill, which gets tested early on here in the second, did play pretty well. Now, this first power play, at least at the start of it, well, Grubauer's the reason that the puck doesn't go in the net pretty quickly, but eventually they settle in and are able to clear it out and keep this one from really getting too dangerous for the rest of the power play after those first couple of shots. But then, a couple minutes after the Kraken successfully kill off this penalty, they actually win a face-off in the defensive end, which after a strong outing in their previous game was back to being a weakness overall, but they do win this one. It's Matty Beniers who wins it back for Alexiak. Alexiak gets to the puck and then no-look passes it from the corner down along the boards behind the Kraken net, which normally would be fine if you at least took a glance to see who was going to get that puck first, and if he had taken that glance, he would have seen that it was Nikolai Ehlers that was getting to that spot behind the net first, and probably wouldn't have made the pass. Instead, he makes the no-look pass, it goes right to Ehlers, and although Borgen tries to contest it and prevent him from getting a pass off out in front of it, Ehlers is able to get that pass off, and it's Wheeler who Alexiak also failed to cover after making the pass, that gets out in front, gets this pass, and is one-on-one with Grubauer. He makes Grubauer go to one side and then goes quickly back to the other and tucks it around Grubauer's leg and just into the side of the net to give the Jets the 1-0 lead. So, yeah, Alexiak might as well have put this puck in the net himself, and honestly, it was this type of mistake by the Kraken, a terrible one turning it over in the defensive end. It was basically the only way that one was going to get past Grubauer the way he was playing this game, as he's left with pretty much no chance whatsoever as long as Wheeler plays it right, and he does. And then to make matters worse, Not long after, the Jets go back to the power play, with the Kraken actually kill off even better than the first time, and get a couple of shorthanded chances at the end, one that Wemberg nearly puts in for a shorthanded goal as he wraps it around backhanded, or on the backhand, and gets it out in front of the net, and it goes off of a skate of one of the Jets players, and then off of the far post and stays out. So there you go, Wemberg comes this close to making up for that easy tap-in goal he should have had earlier by getting a fortunate bounce off a defender's skate to tie the game. While this doesn't go in though, just shortly after this power play comes to an end, the Kraken are able to tie it up off of a beautiful play, mostly by Geeky, but finished by the birthday boy in John Hayden. It actually starts from Alexiak down in the Kraken end and pretty well into the Kraken end, who, trying to make up for his basically secondary assist on the Jets goal, throws the puck down the ice towards Geeky, who's on the far blue line, well down the ice from Alexiak, and the pass is going pretty well wide of Geeky, but Geeky's able to stretch his stick out to the boards, get it on the puck, preventing what would have been icing, and then not only that, but corral it, get into the offensive end, and pass it right out net front, where pretty much all Hayden has to do is skate towards the net with his stick on the ice. It goes off of his stick and into the back of the net to get his second of the season and tie the game at 1 for the Kraken, with, again, Hayden scoring on his birthday, so happy birthday him. And also, while we're on the subject, happy birthday to John Forsland, as I guess it was just a birthday for everyone named John that has anything to do with the Kraken. But Forsland isn't going to score any goals up in the press box, much less the fact that he refuses to skate at all. So happy birthday to Forsland, who called a great game and definitely had a little bit of extra, I don't know, there was a little extra to John's call. He had a couple of good one-liners during this game, but Hayden makes the most of his 4th game now for the Kraken, having 2 goals in 4 games. So has made the most of his opportunities, getting to play in place of Sprong in this one. But again, this play does pretty much all happen because of Geeky making a pretty nice hand-eye play to get the pass from Alexiak in the first place, and then also find Hayden coming in. Geeky also with at least his brother in town. I think his whole family is there, as his brother plays in juniors in that area, so his brother was there to watch Geeky get a nice assist here. And then immediately after scoring, this line almost scores again right off the faceoff. They aren't able to do so, but the Kraken as a team do continue to press for more right up towards the end of the period, when eventually they will get their 4th power play of the game with about a minute, I think it was a minute and 14 seconds left in the period, so it's one of these awkward ones that's going to span intermission. And considering how the Kraken power play has been going lately, especially with these power plays that span intermission usually having less of a chance of scoring, I don't think anyone was feeling particularly good about their chances of getting a second goal here. But we're all pleasantly surprised. And speaking of people that were pleasantly surprised by this goal, even the guy who scores it himself in Jared McCann, as the final seconds of the second period are coming to an end, I think also would fall into that category by scoring a goal here, as even he had a hard time not laughing about this on the bench afterwards. He gets the puck up at the top of the faceoff circle and then fires off a shot as the, again, final seconds are coming, so why not just shoot the puck? What's the worst that could happen? And sure enough, it goes off of Dylan DeMello, who's right in front of him, blocking the shot, off of DeMello, across the slot, off of Appleton, and into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 2-1 lead and the power play goal. So McCann gets his 25th of the season, and when they say a goal scorer's goal, this is what they're talking about. One that just only seems to go in for guys who are scoring a lot, and especially scoring on a higher percentage of shots than you would expect, which has definitely been the case for McCann this season. And of course, it certainly wasn't lost on anybody that a year ago this would have been a primary assist for McCann, as Appleton and McCann were teammates at this point last year. Although it probably would have gotten called back for kicking because it goes off of Appleton's foot, even if it was an accident, but that's a whole different thing. The point is, Appleton is playing for the Jets now, and he can kick it into his own net even if this was an accident. So the Kraken catch a couple of lucky breaks on the same shot, and it ends up in the back of the net to give them the lead. Plus, not only is Appleton still scoring goals for the Kraken while not playing for them, but the other guy that this bounces off in DeMello was the second most likely person that the Kraken would have taken in the expansion draft to Appleton. So going all the way back to where this all started, when we were looking at who the Kraken were going to take from the Jets after we saw the protection lists, it was DeMello and Appleton that were the two most likely options, and, well, McCann puts it off of both of them to score his 25th of the season here. So we head to the third period with the Kraken having a 2-1 lead, and also being the first team to score on a power play, finally scoring on their fourth attempt, and also having killed off now 2 power plays for the Jets. Plus, going into a third period with a lead is something the Kraken have done a very good job of holding on to and winning those games, coming in such scenarios with a 22-1-2 record, as they said on the broadcast. Unfortunately, after this game, that drops to 22-1-3, but they don't lose too many games after having that lead coming into the final frame. Unfortunately, while it did look like they were going to be able to just kind of ice this one away by doing that back and forth play and not allowing too many good scoring chances, and actually almost get an insurance chance as Borgen put one off of a post, they do end up having that lucky bounce from McCann come back to bite them, as the hockey karma of the world strikes right back right away. It comes off of a lost faceoff for the Kraken in their own end of the ice. That comes out to Morrissey. He skates around with it for a bit and then fires off a shot that Grubauer is able to save. It bounces out in front, and Dubois, who's next to Grubauer on the far side, can't really get to the puck very cleanly, so he just kind of one-hand whacks at it, and it goes off of Dunn and into the net, off of Dunn's shin. So, not quite as lucky of a bounce as McCann got, having it go off of 2 Jets defensemen instead, or defensive players. Instead, this just goes off of the 1 Kraken defender. Either way, it's the same net and another lucky bounce that scores a goal. And of course, again, for Grubauer, really not much of anything he could do about this one. I mean, I guess he could have caught it cleanly and not allowed a rebound, but it's hard to make saves when pucks go off of your own players and into the net behind you. Plus, he was the best player on the ice really for either team, so it's hard to nitpick his game too much. Especially considering that even after this goal goes in about halfway through the third period, it's really only Philip Grubauer that prevents the Kraken from losing this one in regulation and getting that 1 point out of this game, as the Jets immediately get momentum following this goal and very nearly score on a couple of occasions, Grubauer coming up with a couple of very nice saves. None quite as nice as a save that he had actually way back in the first period that he gets while laying stomach down on the ice. He got his glove up to stop Dubois, so I guess Dubois still gets one off of that lucky bounce. But Grubauer shuts down this press by the Jets and then continues to shut them down as they get their third power play of the game, which the Kraken do kill off. Eventually we get to overtime, where there actually ends up being 5 shots on goal, so both teams get some looks. No one scores. The game goes to the shootout, and then it's just a crapshoot skills competition. Grubauer gets scored on twice, or I guess the Jets score twice, and the Kraken, I'm not sure they even got one on goal. It's Donato who puts one wide, and then Eberle, maybe it was a save, but it wasn't a very good shot. Either way, the Kraken are not particularly good at shootouts, and it shows as they lose their 3rd and 3 attempts this season. So, again, it's nice that the Kraken were able to get 1 point against one of the Western Conference, and really NHL as a whole's best teams in their own arena at the end of a long road trip, but especially coming into the third period with a lead, you would have liked to see the Kraken hold on to that and get a second point in this game, especially considering the way that this road trip started. Now, like I said, they will have a chance to make up for that with actually 3 easy teams coming up in the next few games, with the Flyers, who, like we said, are not necessarily an easy out, but definitely a team the Kraken should beat, especially at home. And then the Red Wings, who are having a tougher season, and then the easiest of all, the Sharks, who are, even if the players and coaches might not be in on this, as an organization actively trying to lose to get a better chance at Connor Bedard. Certainly, though, for the Kraken, the biggest takeaway from this game was the play of Philip Grubauer, as he ends up stopping 38 of the 40 shots on goal that the Jets get. Now, a couple of those come in overtime, so that isn't all regulation shots, but at least I want to say 38 of them were in regulation, as I think the Jets got 2 of the overtime shots. So that's a lot more shots than the Kraken usually let up, and there were a fair number of chances right up in front of the net. Now, a lot of that, there were Kraken players up there to contest those shots right in front of the net, and at least not make it easy for the Jets, outside of the one that Wheeler scores on the Alexiak turnover. but Grubauer was an absolute brick wall. And again, the only two that end up getting past him are off that Alexiak turnover, where all Wheeler has to do is play it well, which he does, and then the one that goes off of Grubauer's teammate in Dunn past him. And the other positive takeaway from this game for the Kraken, other than again the play of Grubauer, which was easily number one, would be that they finally won the special teams battle, especially considering there were 7 power plays in total in this game. And if we came into this knowing that there were going to be 7 power plays, regardless of which team they were for, assuming they were probably going to be somewhat even, because that's just how NHL officials like to do things, regardless of how the play is actually dictating, you probably would have assumed the Jets were going to win this game, especially considering special teams in this matchup in the previous 2 games in Seattle heavily favored the Jets. The Kraken stop all 3 Jets power plays and score one, even if it was a somewhat lucky one by McCann, on their 4 attempts. Now yes, only time will tell if this was just a one-off, or if the Kraken special teams can start to slowly get things turned around. I wouldn't expect it to all happen at once, but at least the penalty kill, outside of not looking great in a couple of those losses at the start of this road trip, has played in large a lot better over the last couple of weeks, and I would say is trending in a good direction, even if they're still sitting at 31st because of how bad they were through the first half of the season. The power play, on the other hand, I wouldn't be too hopeful. They did have a tough time, and well, sure, you could point out that they did score once. That came off of a pretty lucky bounce, and again, you could say that they should have scored a second time if Wemberg had just shot that one backhanded into the empty net behind him, but he's part of the power play and he made that decision, so that's kind of part of the problem. Again, either way though, we're just gonna have to wait and see what the rest of the season holds for Kraken special teams. If they can at least get more towards NHL average, and if they can get towards NHL average on both of those units, then they have a basically guaranteed shot at the playoffs. As 5-on-5, they're still one of the best teams in the NHL. Even if their transition game through the neutral zone has been a little bit more spotty during this road trip than we were used to before the All-Star break. As we do now come to the Kraken 3 stars in this game, the first one I think is pretty obvious. He was the first official star, and that is Philip Grubauer, as he just straight up steals a point in this game for the Kraken, stopping, like I already said, 38 of 40 shots through overtime. And yeah, really the only reason the Kraken didn't just lose their 4th game of the road trip straight up and do at least get 1 point out of this game. Grubauer continues to be strong in net for the Kraken, and of course, after somewhat ironically, probably one of his worst games of the last month or so was the one that they won, scoring 4 points. He has another fantastic game, and they can only score 2 on the other end, even without Hellebuck in net for the Jets. So the run support for Grubauer continues to be a bit of an issue, but at least he's playing well and doing it pretty consistently. And if the Kraken continue to get that version of Grubauer the rest of the way, and especially in the playoffs, this could be a fun run towards the end of the season and postseason. As for the second and third stars, this is where things do get a little bit more difficult, and that's honestly because there weren't that many players for the Kraken that had particularly standout games that were all around positive. Wemberg created some good offensive opportunities and was big on the penalty kills, but did have a giveaway that forced Grubauer to make that nice save in the first period, and then didn't score later on in the power play when he definitely should have, also in the first period. Meanwhile, pretty much the entire Kraken blue line had a pretty tough game outside of maybe Justin Schultz, but even then he didn't necessarily stand out positively either. So the second star, I'm going to go with the birthday boy in Hayden. He does get his second goal in 4 games for the Kraken. And while I wouldn't say he made an overwhelmingly huge positive impact, he certainly didn't make a negative impact either. And for a guy who's, again, the last forward in, and a guy that's only played 4 games for the Kraken this season, coming in for injuries mostly, I think not having a negative impact and then scoring a goal is about as much as you can expect, especially for a guy on his birthday. So Hayden, second star. And then the third star, I think it's going to be Morgan Geekie. He does put one off of the post, as well as, actually it wasn't off the post. He almost scored a insurance marker before the Jets tied the game in the third, and also made that play to set up Hayden for the goal. So I'll go Geekie there. Also really didn't have any particularly big negative parts of his game in this one. So yeah, Grubauer easily far and away number 1 star. John Hayden will get the 2nd star, and then Geeky the 3rd. But as always, let me know what you think down in the comment section, who you would give your stars to, what you thought of this game. The Kraken at least get a point out of it, but they've only won now 4 games of their last 12, so there's reason to be a little apprehensive about how things are going. The good news is that the schedule does get a lot easier here for the next few. They've got those 3 easy teams we talked about, then a couple tough matchups in Boston and Toronto coming into town, and then some more easy teams after that. Anyway, if you have made it to this point, and especially if you watch the stream, so we did stream this game if you want to see any live reactions from any of the stuff that happened in this game, thank you very much for watching to this point. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, back at home for the first time in a while, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.